Data breaches have been an epidemic. Every year brings countless headlines about companies whose safeguards have been defeated, resulting in the exposure of personal data. Every year, the breaches grow bigger and more numerous. What's worse is that we haven't reached the peak yet. The curve just keeps going up, with no end in sight. Organizations and policymakers can't be faulted for ignoring the problem. Over the years, many organizations have dramatically increased their spending on security. Policymakers have sprung into action, enacting a myriad of new data security and breach notification laws during the past 15 years. But the problem keeps growing. It is difficult to fully understand the scope of the problem. Stats on data breaches differ quite substantially, so it is hard to obtain precise numbers. Additionally, the metric for measuring the extent of the data breach problem is unclear. Some commentators point to the number of breaches in a given year, and others point to the number of records breached. Both figures are subject to some flux and contingency, especially the number of records breached, because one enormous breach can significantly impact that number. Additionally, breaches are often attributed to the year in which they are announced, but this date often is long after the breach occurred. For example, the Yahoo breaches occurred in 2013 and 2014, but weren't fully reported until 2016 and 2017. Is there any wisdom to be gleaned from these statistics? Comparisons from one year to the next have often been made, with each year often being designated as the worst. Despite the lack of precision in the data, the trend over time has been clear, a notable increase in the number of breaches and the number of records breached. For example, in 2005, there were 136 reported breaches involving about 55 million records. In 2018, there were 668 reported breaches involving about 1.37 billion records. We have yet to see any signs that this terrible trajectory will improve. A brief history of data breaches. Ever since data breaches started to be reported, the stories have proceeded in an endless parade of horrors. The unofficial beginning of the data breach nightmare occurred in 2005 with the announcement of the ChoicePoint breach. ChoicePoint, a big data company that amassed extensive profiles of personal data on people, was breached when fraudsters masqueraded as legitimate customers and obtained records on about 162,000 individuals. ChoicePoint's announcement of its breach was one of the first public disclosures by an organization that it had been infiltrated. Before 2005, there were certainly many data breaches, but companies weren't required to report them, so there isn't much recorded history. These were akin to prehistoric times. In 2005, light began to shine on the dark underworld of data security. After the announcement of the ChoicePoint breach, several other companies came forward with their data breaches. Bank of America announced a breach involving 1.2 million records. DSW, a retailer, disclosed a hack that compromised 1.4 million records. Citigroup announced a breach involving 3.9 million records. These breaches seemed to be large until Card System Solutions announced that it had 40 million records hacked. Although there were accounts of a few breaches prior to 2005, it wasn't until this year that the mainstream news started to focus on data breaches. California's breach notification law and the rapid passage of similar laws in other states prompted many organizations to finally air their dirty laundry. Data breaches finally received public attention.